Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Get Out of the Dark and Turn on the Insights, 5 Steps to Full Funnel Visibility. I'm Carol Kroll. I'm Editor-in-Chief of Demand Gen Report, and I'll be your moderator today. This session is part of our week-long Strategy and Planning series, where we're covering emerging challenges and opportunities that modern marketers face and offering practical solutions to supercharge 2016. Be sure to check out the rest of the webinars in the series, either in real time or on demand. I also want to encourage you to follow along on Twitter using the SPS 2015 hashtag. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback during today's webinar. You can connect with us at DG_report. Myself at Carol Kroll, and with Full Circle, Bonnie Crater, Jobvite, and Matt Singer at FC_insights, at Bonnie Crater, at Jobvite, and at Matthew D. Singer. And this is really exciting. We're giving away an Apple Watch at the end of the SPS series, and you'll earn 1 entry every time you register for a session, and another entry when you attend live. So please be sure to register for and attend as many sessions as you can. More chances to win. And for those of you who might be new to Demand Gen Report, just a quick overview. We're an online media company. We publish daily news, a weekly email newsletter, special reports, original research, and a rich menu of additional resources. In addition, we produce the annual Content to Conversion and Demand Gen Summit live event. And if you haven't done so already, check that out at contenttoconversion.com and join more than 36,000 subscribers to our weekly newsletter by subscribing to Demand Gen Report today. So for today's presentation, we're using the On24 platform. During the presentation, you can access all of the information here that you need right from the platform toolbar. And we encourage you to ask our presenters questions. To do so, you simply click the Q&A widget right at the top right corner of your screen. And today's session is being recorded, and all attendees are going to receive a archive link to the presentation, so you can go back and review that and share it with your colleagues. And before I introduce our featured speakers for today, just one last housekeeping note. Today's presentation is slated to run about 20 to 30 minutes with 5 to 10 minutes Q&A following the presentation. So while the presenters are giving us their great insights, submit your questions for them using the Q&A widget in the console. And now I'm very pleased to introduce today's featured speakers. First up will be Bonnie Crater. She's President and CEO of Full Circle Insights. Prior to joining Full Circle, Bonnie held Vice President and Senior Vice President roles at Genesis, Netscape, Network Computer, Salesforce.com, Stratify, Realization, and VoiceObjects, which is now Boxio. She's a 10-year veteran of Oracle Corporation as well. She was Vice President of Compact Products Division and Vice President of the Workgroup Products Division, and she was also President and CEO of Zellerate, which is an open source e-commerce solution. She was named one of the 100 most influential women by the Silicon Valley Business Journal and one of 20 women to watch in 2015 by the Sales Lead Management Association. Bonnie holds a BA in biology from Princeton University. And after Bonnie, Matt Singer will take the mic, and he is Vice President of Marketing for Jobvite. Matt Singer has officially been in marketing and sales for the past 15 years, but informally for 30-plus years, starting with cookie, lemonade, and lawn-mowing businesses in his neighborhood at the age of 8. So he started pretty young. Outside of work, he says he's a proud husband, father, and amphibian. He tries to spend as much time as possible in the water, abalone diving, fishing, and surfing. He's also a self-proclaimed data geek, spending his career channeling that data obsession into building great brands and scalable marketing machines. His career is B2B focused, primarily on HR software, but recruiting is his biggest professional passion. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Bonnie first, and then Matt. And Bonnie, go for it.
All right. Thank you, Carol. here's our agenda for today. We've already covered the introductions. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Full Circle Insights and our 5-step approach, and then Matt's going to talk about his journey in using funnel metrics, and then we'll have some Q&A. So as Carol mentioned, I'm CEO of Full Circle Insights, and at Full Circle Insights, what we do is we help marketing people accurately track and measure the impact of marketing campaigns on pipeline and revenue. And our typical customer looks something like this. The salespeople are using Salesforce, and then the marketing people are using a different system. They're using the marketing automation system. And the problem that our customers have is that the data is different in the marketing automation system than in Salesforce. And so consequently, what happens is that the marketing people have a really, really hard time figuring out if their marketing is impacting pipeline and revenue and how well it impacts pipeline and revenue. And so we built our products on top of the Salesforce platform, and what it does is it gives marketing people the ability to get that visibility they need to truly optimize marketing budgets. So you can take and see the campaigns that are actually impacting the business, and you can see the campaigns that are not impacting business. We've all run marketing campaigns that have generated a lot of leads, and we've all run campaigns that have generated a lot of leads and generated no business. And so what we do is we help companies and marketing people identify which campaigns are actually impacting the business. So those can be prioritized higher, and the ones that are not impacting business, they can be prioritized a lot lower, if not discarded. Just a little bit about our product, and forgive the commercial, but this is important to understand as Matt talks about his journey using Full Circle. The product is actually built on top of the Salesforce platform, and this is really important for a couple of reasons. One is it allows the data to be well organized right inside of Salesforce, and then the second is that marketing people can see the data inside Salesforce, and salespeople see the same data inside Salesforce. So they're not arguing over, which data is right. Is it right in Salesforce or right in the marketing automation system? Everybody sees the same data, and this is a huge advantage because then you can really have really good conversations with salespeople. B2B marketing is really fun. And the reason it's really fun is because you have two groups who operate slightly differently, the salespeople and the marketing people. And so when they're operating off the same data, these two groups, they can really make huge strides and huge impacts on their businesses. So one aspect of the software is that we leverage the existing integrations that the marketing automation systems already have with Salesforce. So this makes it quite simple. You don't have to do anything with, most people don't have to do anything with their integration that already exists between those marketing automation systems and Salesforce. They just start up and start using Full Circle. So we have a number of really great customers, as shown here. And these customers, as I mentioned, when they use that software, they have a really big impact on their business. Today we're going to talk about funnel metrics. This is a really favorite subject of mine. And I discovered funnel metrics a long time ago and always wanted to measure my marketing using these types of metrics. It turns out that Serious Decisions has a really great best practice around funnel metrics. They call it the Serious Decisions Demand Waterfall. And that's seems to be the best way right now, if you follow the Serious Decisions best practices and leverage waterfall metrics, you can do a really great job in optimizing your marketing. So here's how you do it. First of all, you don't need to be a data scientist. You don't have to have a PhD in statistics. Any marketing person can do this. And so here's the approach. Step one. Okay, the first thing is just understand that you might have a marketing data problem. That your marketing data in your marketing automation system is different than the data that's marketing data that's in Salesforce. And so you want to try to understand and acknowledge that this problem exists. Then the next thing to do is to set goals. So what you can do is you take your existing funnel and you look at what the volume and the velocity and the conversion rates are, and you can set a goal for what you want to do in the future. First, you look at what you're doing now, and then you set a goal of what you want to do in the future. A second big part of this is defining what the terminology is that you're using to define the different steps and stages in your funnel. And so it's really important to work within the marketing team and within the sales team and with the executives so that everyone is using the same language. And that's where that serious decisions demand waterfall really comes in handy, because you can use that as kind of a baseline and go from there. Almost everybody uses slightly different terminology than is in the baseline serious decisions waterfall, but starting there is a really good place for most companies. Next, you have to take that information and in your goals and really align all your teams and the execs so that everybody knows what you're trying to accomplish. And once everybody's on the same page, then you can get started. So step 4 is to measure your progress. So you want to measure the volume and the velocity and the conversion rates. The overall ones, and you can look at the data of campaigns that are sourced by marketing. You can also compare it about campaigns that are sourced by sales or from your partner programs. And you can measure your progress against your goals. And then the last thing to do, of course, is to assess. Assess and reassess to further drive better revenue. So when you're assessing, what you're doing is you're looking, it's pretty simple. You can get a stack rank of all the campaigns. You can see which ones are driving revenue and which ones are not. You can see which campaigns are driving revenue early in the sales cycle, so they're good lead sources. You can see the ones that are driving revenue later in the sales cycle, so you can use those to help accelerate your sales cycle. And so by using funnel metrics, you can make all these adjustments and further drive your success. Now, I'm really excited to be here with Matt Singer, who of course is the VP of Marketing at Jobvite. And Matt started using funnel metrics, what was it, Matt? It was like a year and a half ago? Maybe 2 years ago? 2 years, yeah. About 2 years ago. And you can see, what he's going to tell you is about his journey of starting to understand the impact of funnel metrics on the Jobvite business. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt now and have him tell his story, and then I'll come back again and talk about and summarize how the story relates to this approach.
Cool.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Great. Well, thank you, Bonnie. Thank you to Carol for facilitating today's discussion, and I appreciate that first kind of tee up of this, because my story and Jobvite's story aligns really well with this approach. So hopefully this is useful for those of you on today's webinar. I'll do a quick intro of Jobvite, and then we'll get into the agenda. So Jobvite is a recruiting platform in the HR space. We basically view recruiting as a funnel, and we have a variety of products to manage that funnel, from building talent pools at the top, managing your hiring process in the middle, video interviewing, branded career sites, and analytics. We're a couple hundred people. We have a couple thousand customers, and here's a subset of some of those folks. All right, well, let's get into the full circle stuff. So as Bonnie said, I'd say I've been using funnel metrics for more like 10 years, but the last 2 years is when I really started using them correctly. And a lot of that is attributed to the data visibility that we get out of Full Circle. We actually used Full Circle. I inherited it when I first joined here at Jobvite, and it was one of those situations where the folks on the Jobvite side before me hadn't necessarily implemented it to its maximum capacity. And so when we took over, we really dug in and saw what what was working, what wasn't, not just with Full Circle, but the funnel itself, and and made a lot of changes and improvements. So just to kind of tee up the business problem, the scenario was at the end of last year, we were raising money for our Series D funding here at Jobvite and really needed to demonstrate our ability to scale marketing. This round of funding was focused on growth in sales and marketing, and increasingly the venture capital community wants visibility into how companies are tracking that marketing spend. So that was the problem. The challenge was we really didn't have a single source of data, very similar to what Bonnie described. We had disparate data sources across Marketo and Salesforce and others. We really needed that single source of data. And that lack of data was really driving a lack of alignment between sales and marketing, some of the other departments as well, but particularly that traditional rift between the sales and marketing organization. So we worked through that. Full Circle was a big part of it. We'll talk about some of the solutions and results that we had as a result. All right, so first in terms of the problem. So as I said, it was really about raising money. We needed to see the return on the revenue scaled out over a number of years, and so we needed to be able to slice and dice the funnel in a variety of ways. So the challenges, I touched on some of them, but to drill in a little bit more. So again, we didn't have a single source of data. That lack of a single source of data was leading to mistrust, different departments owning their own set of data that conflicted with other departments, sort of quarreling about which one was right, and the truth is probably they were all sort of right. That was leading to a lack of exec buy-in because the execs saw that we didn't have comprehensive agreement across the organization. And then again, that obviously drove misalignment between the teams. So we recognized that that was the problem. We had a funnel, and this is an example here of kind of at its core the 4 stages that we look at. And then we had identified some key areas that you see bulleted out to the right-hand side here in terms of where we needed to either be measuring or improve SLAs, or areas where we just were missing the data altogether and needed to put processes in place to start tracking all of these components. So we had staged up the problem, we knew what we needed to do, and it was really time to start working through the solutions. So the first step that we took was, because we knew that sales and marketing was where most of this data was going to be coming out of, we decided to bring the 2 operations teams together. So sales and marketing operations were actually functioning as a single team through that entire process and have continued to function as a single organization up until recently. We've grown to the size now that we do have a dedicated sales operations director, but he is also a big fan of Full Circle and stays aligned with us on the metrics tracking. But during the stage of sorting out the problem, and because we had a lack of a single source of data, for us at least in our use case, it was important to bring those functions together. So I wanted to just mention here, because I think there, depending on the size of your organization and where you're at in your business life cycle, that may not be the right answer for you guys on the webinar, but is really more about the underlying business problem, which is figuring out how to address that lack of alignment that's traditional in so many organizations. So that's really the biggest thing, is recognizing if you have that problem, and if so, what are the systems and processes that you need to put in place to overcome that. So for us, we wanted to centralize that knowledge through that ops team. That drove exec buy-in. It also created these liaisons who could align the other organizations across the company, like finance and customer success. They were able to set some realistic timelines and then get those shared goals in place that we could all get behind across the various business units within the organization. So as I mentioned, right, marketing and sales ops unification might not be the right approach for your company, but it's really about understanding the problem. And if you're like most organizations, you have some degree of misalignment between sales and marketing, and you can address some of that problem through the systems that you're using and the underlying data. So Full Circle was, on the system side, what we look to represent that sort of a team of ops folks in terms of labor force. The systems approach was Full Circle. So those guys own that system. They basically did a reboot of the implementation, knowing that we had a new set of criteria, new requirements, new SLAs. And the goal was really, again, to get to that single source of truth by merging Marketo, Salesforce, and then various data sets that we feed into those two systems. So yeah, the credibility, transparency were two really big things that came out of it. We were able to be more forthright with the data, knowing that we were all showing the same stuff. We weren't double checking against each other's data to be sure we had agreement. That led to the credibility across the organization and a real trust in what we were showing. It helped with efficiency, and I'll talk a little bit more as we get into kind of the details of how we use the product and how that increased our efficiency. And then we were able to really agree upon the definitions, particularly around service level agreements. And I think for any SLA to work, you have to have agreement between the two teams, because ultimately sales is enforcing those SLAs on their side. And if they aren't in agreement on what the SLAs are, then the system really breaks down. So it takes time. So that would be my one caveat for the rebooting of the implementation. Any system, whether it's Marketo, Full Circle, Salesforce, obviously it's a much lighter implementation than a product like Marketo or Salesforce, but you really do need to put the effort in up front because of what I mentioned, right? Organizations all function differently. So it's one of those situations, and I think this is true for all technology in the SaaS world, but really taking that time to understand what it is that you want to solve, translating those business problems into the key tracking mechanisms, SLAs, fields, reports, agree on that as an organization, and then take that to the Full Circle team. So I don't think it had anything to do with them on the implementation. We brought them a set of requirements the first time around, and I don't think had done enough due diligence on scoping out the project internally. So I would just encourage folks, as you undergo an exercise like this, that you really have a clear understanding first within your own organization about what the problem is you're trying to solve and how data is going to lead to that solution. All right, so now we'll get into some of the data itself and some of the reports. So this one is kind of the money slide, I guess. This is really what I use on a regular basis, the thing that the other organizations within Jobvite want visibility into. It's something that really helps us track the ROI of our marketing investments. So what's different about this is I've used homegrown solutions before. I've used my SQL database to try to kind of hobble together some sort of funnel. The difficulty is that those are all spot-in-time reports. So I can look at the state of all the leads that are in my funnel today, but with Full Circle, we actually have one-to-one visibility, meaning I can track the lead, Mary Jones, the recruiter from company X, I can track her entire buyer's journey through the funnel. It's not aggregate data at a spot in time. I can actually see how she has worked from an inquiry to a qualified lead to sales accepted and then down to an op and a new customer. When you start getting into the more advanced stuff, like with velocity, it really becomes interesting. And as well, where it breaks down is when you try to track ROI and you're aggregating this quarter's budget against leads that could be 2 or 3 years old, your system breaks down. So again, this touches on my point earlier about measuring the funnel accurately. As I said, I've been looking at the funnel for years, but with Full Circle, you really have an ability to look at dollars going in the top of the funnel, whether they went in last month or last year, and tracking those marketing dollars all the way down through to the bottom. So this would be an example where I think a lot of companies fall down and they do their analysis without something like Full Circle. They just look at the current marketing budget and the current state of the funnel. But the reality is the current funnel has leads from budgets from last quarter, last month, last year. You're not really getting a true picture. So it's a classic situation with the data adage of, garbage in, garbage out. So this is the big one for us. And we'll look at some of the other ways that they slice and dice the data. But that's kind of the core starting point that I think all marketers look for, that type of funnel as sort of their holy grail. And then on the SLAs, this is another big one, and as we all know in marketing, it's a big breakdown point between sales and marketing. We think that the leads are great and there's plenty of them. Sales typically thinks either there isn't enough leads or if there are enough that the quality is not good enough. But to truly measure whether, which of those statements is true and the degree to which it's true, you have to have SLAs in place to be able to track what's happening to the leads, if they're not good, why aren't they good, are reps following up in a timely manner, and so forth. So this is one of the full circle dashboards that we use. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but we actually track through the date stamp reporting from Full Circle the moment that a lead reaches a rep's queue, and then we have a 48-hour SLA, and then basically emails go out once a rep is outside that SLA through this dashboard, and we have some custom routing built in place to where this will escalate as far up as the CEO if they don't follow up on their leads. So this stuff just keeps working its way up the workflow, and I'll just say it never gets to the CEO because that accountability factor, them knowing that the SLAs are being enforced, no one wants their name appearing in front of the CEO for not following up on leads. So here's when we get into some of the results as well. As you can see here, we've seen a great improvement in the SLAs in terms of enforcement of them, the amount of time that it's taking for reps to follow up, and this is leading to ultimately what you hope the outcome is more sales accepted leads, right? So when your funnel's breaking down between MQL and sales accepted, what's often happening there is either marketing is passing bad leads or the reps aren't being diligent enough with their follow-up, either on the amount of times they're following up or the time it's taking to get to those people. So Full Circle gives us visibility into all of that. We saw a 10% increase in sales accepted leads, and again, that was without doing any changes to our campaigns, just simply through enforcing the rules. Okay, so these are some of the other ways that you can slice and dice the funnel, and I think these are really more for examples for those of you on the call to understand that the Full Circle solution is very configurable, so we've been able to set it up for our own organization and what matters for us. So we have a few different sales organizations, so as you can see here, I can slice and dice the funnel by rep, by team. I can look at things like velocity and really break them down. It's very much a function of Salesforce. So whatever fields exist for you in Salesforce, you can take those fields and matrix them into your reporting in Full Circle. All right, and then on the next one here, so the other thing we like to look at is trending data. So I'm always looking at how is the funnel performing week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter. And I have the ability to compare those funnels in Full Circle and come up with, where is the funnel leaking, and then try to figure out ways to fix that leakage. So again, the point here is Full Circle is not going to tell you how to fix what's broken, but for the first time, you'll be able to truly see what is broken and have a true understanding of your data. I think a lot of times in marketing, we're limited to the systems that we have, and they aren't always catered towards measuring marketing ROI. So you can at least know what campaigns aren't performing. I would love for Bonnie and team to come up with a way to actually tell me how to make them perform better. So maybe if you guys can work on that, it's a little out of their domain. And I mean, that's up to us as marketers to figure out, right? But a lot of times we chase our tails using bad data. So I touched on this, so I won't spend too much time on it. But as I said, we have personalized funnels, so we also track each individual rep. We know what their historical close rates are. So we pull once a month their performance, and then we do a gap analysis based on their historical close rates and let them know that, hey, based on how much you've created in the last 4 weeks, Full Circle has applied your average conversion rate and is letting us know that you're ahead or behind by however many thousands, right? So we track the funnel down to the individual rep number, and this is one of those reports that are really well received by sales management. They love seeing this and understanding rep by rep. Not only are the reps creating enough, but they can also see the top of the funnel and have conversations with us in marketing if the top of funnel input isn't creating enough demand for the rep to hit their numbers. So it just provides visibility from the top of the funnel all the way through to the rep's conversion from opportunity to close business. And I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds with the technical information, but we at least wanted to give you guys an example of what the process looks like for us. So as I said, the SLAs are important for us in terms of finding the good leads, but they're also important for us in terms of measuring what's not working. So for example, before these enforcement rules, we would have reps following up on leads that were often stale and had been sitting in the system for a week. and they weren't getting good responses, and they're responding back telling us it was a bad campaign. But then again, that begs the question, was it the campaign or the lack of follow-up that made the leads unresponsive? So with these SLAs, you're going to have visibility not only into how are the campaigns doing in terms of success, but also finding your underperformers and being able to optimize your marketing spend. We talked about velocity. So again, as you get more advanced with Full Circle and the metrics that you're tracking, you start to understand where the leaks are in your funnel. Then you can look within those stages and try to find issues around velocity. And so we look at, for example, when we look at velocity, we slice and dice it by company size, by the products they're buying, industry. Again, this is also stuff that you can report on in Full Circle. They're not going to give you the answers, as I said, but they're going to give you insight into the problem in a way that you just can't get out of Salesforce. Right, so on the results, so I'll summarize here a couple more slides. As I mentioned, we can really understand the funnel leakage. Stopping the leakage, especially at the top of the funnel, can save tons of money in terms of marketing spend, redirecting that towards other things. It also helps with territory breakdowns, understanding if the funnel's leaking by geography. It led to that increase in communication and transparency. We're an incredibly well-aligned team, and I'm really happy with the outcome between the sales and marketing organizations and how we work together today. And then we talked at the beginning about a lack of trust in the data. Well, that's really gone 180 degrees, and the marketing operations team has really looked at Jobvite as the source of data when you need answers of pretty much anything that lives in Salesforce, and they don't always know it, but we're often pulling that stuff through Full Circle. And so one of the outcomes in terms of that credibility of the data is that we now do our budgeting through the funnel metrics that we get out of Full Circle. So rather than a tops-down budget based on our bookings targets, we instead look at the budget that we have to spend for the year, and then we do a reverse funnel exercise that basically backs into the achievable bookings for the year based on the budget that we were given. So rather than it being tops down, we now do bottoms up using Full Circle. So my two big takeaways, I've touched on these again, but I'll say them one last time, is it does take time, it takes investment. No system is going to just turn itself on and fix problems you have in your organization. So you really need to put the effort in up front to get all the stakeholders aligned, really understand the problem, and then work with Full Circle to translate that business problem into the key metrics that you're going to need to track within the system. And then the other piece was the secret sauce, best practices. Like I said, they're not going to tell you how to fix the problem. So you have to be prepared to have the next step in the process ready to roll, because if you just get insight into a bunch of problems but aren't prepared to make changes and fixes to the funnel, then there's really no use in having the application. So they're really kind of the meat in the middle, and I sort of see us as being the ends on each side of putting that time in the beginning, and then having a plan coming out the bottom when you see the impact and how you're going to make changes to improve your funnel performance. So just I've got some final results here. Yeah, so just to show folks some numbers in terms of ROI. So for us, we had increased our inquiry to win from by 0.77%. So we were running at I think 0.5% roughly conversion rate top to bottom, and we increased that to about 1.25%. So again, these are very small percentages, but for anyone listening who tracks their funnel, the difference between 0.77 and 1.25, for us at least, represents many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that kind of improvement is something that we're really proud of, and something that we wouldn't have been able to measure and improve upon without Full Circle's system to help us along the way. So that's all I've got. Bonnie, you want me to pass it back over to you here? Or?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really like about what you did, Matt, is that you really embraced transparency, right? Mm-hmm. And so everyone can see what's going on. So there's no secrets about, and you're not operating out of fear of the data. Like if a campaign doesn't work, that's okay. You just don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
That's how I perceive that you're operating, and maybe you can
talk
about that a little bit more.
The company is very transparent, I think, as a culture, and I think the transparency in the beginning showed that there were problems with the data because people were sharing things and there was conflicts in what they were seeing. So it's always been transparent, but I think this transparency is one that everyone approaches without conflict or issue because it's the same thing, right? Everyone's looking at the same thing. So I think taking that transparency and having a single source of truth has led to the better alignment between the two teams. And I think misalignment has often been a result of what you said, which is the company's already transparent, but they're being transparent and showing each other that they don't really know what the other person's doing. And so it's nice that we now have that transparency in conjunction with the alignment.
Yeah, that's great. The other cool thing about your story, I really think, is about revenue operations. You're a team, right? And I wanted to ask you a question. Now, does that team, do they run Salesforce, Marketo, and Full Circle, like all three systems? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so the marketing operations team owns all of the systems in the company. And so that includes those three. One guy specifically focuses on the Marketo to Salesforce to Full Circle.
Got it. Okay. And then and the reason I find this really interesting is that this seems to be a best practice because I know companies where they have sales operations running Salesforce and marketing operations running the marketing automation systems, and the sales operations people don't even let the marketing operations even have a login into Salesforce. And so thus there's like, it's like an intentional, split in the organization. And to me, that seems like that is the best practice, is to have one team who's running these systems together because they're inextricably tied in order to get the best data.
Yeah, so we have now as I mentioned, we've grown in the last year and now have a dedicated sales operations person working on the sales side of the company. But even the sales leadership themselves were adamant on the fact that, look, this system we've got working between Marketo, Full Circle, and Salesforce, we don't want to disrupt that. Our sales ops guy is really more focused on comp structures and territories. They were in agreement, and really before I even had a chance to make a case for it, saying we absolutely need to keep those systems centralized. So
right. Okay. And then lastly, you were saying, hey, I wish Full Circle would tell me what was wrong with some of these campaigns. Well, I guess that's the part where marketing skill comes in, because the way I look at it is that it's an experiment, right? These are experiments with a lot of variables, right? And some experiments work really well, and some of them don't. So if you're a variable might be, the list that you use, or it could be the target audience, or the messaging. I mean, there's all these variables. And so by examining the different variables that you're using in the marketing, you can really play with those variables and change one and see if see if the campaign works better.
Yeah, I was being facetious. Obviously, I don't expect you guys to ever figure that out. You put us all out of business, and it just becomes automation. If we don't need a human brain involved in this. But I guess the silly but kind of harsh way to say it is you can't fix stupid. So if you just don't know how to do marketing, Full Circle is not going to help you there.
Yeah,
but if you are a good marketer and you're looking at it and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've got good ideas based on this data, but if the data's wrong, an intelligent person is working with bad data, it's not going to make things better, right? So I think it's just really important. It's sad that people are wasting time optimizing programs on assumptions of data that's incorrect. And I think I've been there myself, and I'm not sure, looking back, how much of the stuff I was looking at directly in Salesforce was the truth versus some sort of variation on the truth. Right?
Yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Really hard to know. Okay, so in the beginning I talked about the approach. So Jobvite acknowledged that there was a data problem, that something was not quite right. The company set some goals through the revenue goals through the financing, and really worked hard to set definitions and align the teams to make sure that everybody understood what was the objective, and just being transparent about that all the data that was there, so that it could be a topic for discussion in meetings and so forth. Then along the way, measuring progress, and then making adjustments along the way it's very exciting for me to see the impact. I mean, it's pretty incredible, Matt, that you more than doubled your productivity in marketing. That's amazing. It's an amazing achievement. So I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
And what Matt won't say because he's very shy, or not that shy, but anyway, Matt and his colleague Ronan were actually promoted after having this great success, which is a well-deserved promotion. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
So I'm going to turn this back over to Carol, our host. Hi, Carol.
Hey, Bonnie. How's it going? That was great. Thanks so much, you guys. So, the questions are rolling in. They can continue to roll in. So if folks have any last-minute questions, there's still a few minutes. We'll go right into the Q&A, though, because there's plenty. It really sparked a lot of good queries. I'm going to start with you, Matt, actually. This question is from Barbara. She wants to know, what did you have to do to align your executives? Did you have, it's more of a granular question, did you have meetings, one-on-ones? What kinds of things were you doing? What was that process like?
Yeah, so the way I approached it is we really started by getting the sales and marketing leadership aligned, and then once we had those two teams in agreement on sort of what needed fixing, then we started out by just, through one-on-one meetings, just sort of informally polling the rest of the executive team and finding out, do you acknowledge that this is a problem? And if so, how do you think we should fix it? And then for those who were more detached from this side of the organization, we presented to them sort of what's going on, examples of the disparate data, examples of lack of visibility, and then did some use cases to show folks what does some of the results we reported, for example, a 20% or 40% increase in funnel productivity, what does that represent to the company? And it's just such a compelling case as marketers spending the demand gen dollars that's really the best way to do it, is you show them how much an incremental change can save the company in terms of expenses and the ROI, and it really sort of just snowballs from there.
Right, so the ROI is the proof of the pudding.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Jeremy, and I think this can be for either Matt or Bonnie. What if sales doesn't want to track their prospecting campaigns? I might not be able to get the appropriate buy-in and participation from the right upper management folks. What now?
I mean, I'll just do a quick answer, and then Bonnie, feel free to chime in. But for us, it was about in full circle going from passive, what they call passive organization, to active organization. So the active organization is really just a setting in Salesforce that requires the sales reps to open up the lead. They have to log a campaign, and there's a real easy way in an automated form to have a simple drop down in the record. The reps pick a campaign, and then that opens the lead up. So it's really an SLA. It's forced behavior, and that for us worked.
Yeah, and that's a best practice for having both sales and marketing participating in this. But we do have some customers where they haven't quite gotten there yet, and that's unfortunate because they're not getting the best data that they can if they don't have sales participating in this. But you can get started, and a lot of our customers do get started this way, where it's a marketing-only solution at first, and then what happens is sales gets wind of this, and then they start thinking, oh my gosh, we also want this good data as well for our campaigns. And so they jump on the bandwagon, and then they've got the whole company working. So you can operate in a passive mode or active mode with regard to sales.
Yeah, I think we were passive for like the first year, and then we grew familiar enough with the tool and had garnered enough buy-in across the teams that we went to active. So.
Right. Results work. Diane is saying her company is way larger than yours, Matt. She says, does this example work in larger enterprises, and does it work more effectively, less effectively? Maybe, Bonnie, you could take that one.
Yeah, sure. So every company has revenue goals. And so this is an opportunity by using funnel metrics to get involved in the discussion about how the company is going to achieve its revenue goals. Without good data, marketing has a really, really hard time doing this. Sales, of course, has typically very good data from opportunity to close. They understand, which reps are performing well, who's are not performing well, what sales team is performing well, what sales team needs improvement. So all that data is fantastic, and the salespeople are armed to the teeth with that information. But when you have data about how marketing is impacting the business, then marketing people can really get in on the conversation. And now's the time of year where that happens, right? It's November and December when those budgets are set for the following year, and the executive teams and the CF are working on setting the revenue targets for the year and setting the expenses. And when marketing has the opportunity to participate in that discussion, it can be very, very powerful for the marketing teams to demonstrate the impact on the business. And it's much more exciting place to be able to contribute to the overall business. And so that, for us, we recommend that, and that is the best practice.
Okay, terrific. So Dan is saying that he wants to know if there's any other tips you have for building this case for funnel alignment, and he jokes that his CEO isn't trying to raise money. Any suggestions for Dan on how he can better build the case for funnel alignment within his company?
I mean, for me, it was just, we touched on it already on the ROI. I would say that all CEOs and CFOs respond well to the idea of making more money. So it starts with them understanding that you have an ability to accurately track the funnel, and that you have ideas to that they have confidence in your ability to fix those leakages. So for me, I would just say it's about building the ROI case. Bonnie, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I mean, once you have this data, the CEOs and CFOs love this data. And because you can say, hey, this campaign didn't work, this did, we're going to do more of these types of campaigns. You can say this combination of campaigns works better. You can do a lot with this information. You can say, hey, these types of campaigns seem to drive faster velocity. CEOs and CFOs love this information. So, just tee it up and make it happen.
Sounds good. Make it happen. Just do it. So lots of great questions rolling in. However, I think we only have time for one more question, and this one's from Melissa, and I think either one of you can take this. Melissa says her data isn't centralized. She says, frankly, it's a mess, and she doesn't see it improving anytime soon. Is there any way to get around that and deploy and track analytics anyway? Is that still possible?
Well, I don't think anybody's data is perfect. I mean, that's just a fact. So if you say your data is a mess, how much of a mess is it really? The best thing to do is just to get started and to work on cleaning up the data as you go. Because the more time you waste, and defer, by saying, hey, I can't do anything because I got to clean up my data, that is time lost that you are not optimizing your marketing budget. So we would recommend kind of doing both at the same time to work on getting the metrics in place, and then have initiatives as you're doing that to clean up your data.
Right, work on it as you go, as you said. Well, that's terrific. Bonnie and Matt Singer, Bonnie Crater, thank you so much today for sharing your great insights. And thank you to all of our attendees as well for taking the time to join us today. I just wanted to remind everyone today's webinar will be available on demand, and so you can access that at any time, share it with your colleagues, talk about it, socialize about it. One last note, we've got lots more to come the rest of this week. We're just getting started in Demand Gen Report's Strategy and Planning webinar series, so stay tuned for our next webinar. It's called Get More Value from Every Click and Content Asset, and that's with my colleague Andrew Gaffney and Elle Wolf, who's VP of Marketing at Lookbook HQ. That's taking place tomorrow, Tuesday, November 17th at 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, and we hope to see you there. And for everyone, thanks and enjoy the rest of your day.